Hello, Gen Genies. Before we get started, Rich and I want to let you in on some exciting updates for our Patreon subscribers.
Patreon is a site where listeners can pledge a small monthly amount, either $5 or $10, to support the cost of bringing you your favorite podcast.
All patrons get early access to new CutOff Genes episodes before they're released to the public.
And along with our undying gratitude, you'll also be able to join our special patron-only Facebook group.
But the most exciting new perk is exclusive access to essays I'm writing from my upcoming memoir. And you guys can help me be editors.
New Patreon supporters will also get a shout-out on the podcast.
Rich and I enjoy bringing you the CutOff Genes podcast and would mean so much if you would consider supporting our labor of love.
Just go to patreon.com/CutOff Genes podcast.
Thank you all so much, my Gen Genies.
And now, on with the show.
Is your family tree a mystery? Are you fascinated by genealogy? Well, hip, hip, hooray, let's talk DNA with Julie.
The truth is in your genes.
In CutOff Genes.
Welcome to CutOff Genes, the podcast that helps you find your truth using nothing but DNA. I am Julie Dixon Jackson. I'm a genetic genealogist, henceforth known as a Gen Genie.
And I am Richard Castle, the co-host and also the producer of this podcast. We're nearing the end of the 6th season, Julie. We're racking up a lot of episodes.
Good Lord. How do we do that? How do we do it?
I have no idea.
How do we do it?
I don't know.
And also, we've just overnight, it's that day in Los Angeles where you go from air conditioning to heat overnight.
I just washed my heavy quilt I had to go to the laundromat to do it because I can't do it in my the washing machine I have here. It's just my washing machine starts to move around the room when I put that in there.
Yeah, that's always fun and dangerous.
Yeah.
I live in an almost 100-year-old house, so we don't have, what's that called? Insulation. It's not insulated.
Oh, wow.
So it's a big old drafty 100-year-old house that, even though outside is very pleasant right now, this is
beautiful. This
is peak.
This is why we live here.
This
Los
is why
Angeles.
we live here. Exactly. However, my house is drafty as hell.
Yeah.
So,
you know what, though? I am digging this fall weather, because I grew up in New England, and I just love when you feel that weather change. It's very sudden. Yes. And, of course, here, tomorrow it could be 100 degrees, and then,
probably will be. Yeah, I put my Ugg boots on yesterday.
Oh, wow.
So, that's a real.
That's a commitment. So, Julie, what's going on with DNA news?
Oh, all sorts of stuff. I wanted to give a couple of Patreon shout outs to a couple of new patrons.
Oh, great.
Who have recently joined. Let me see, who will we call out? Oh, Wendy Jorgensen and Ann Walsh. Thank you for joining. Now, I know that I am supposed to give you access to the Patreon so that you can actually listen to the episodes that I'm posting.
Yes.
And I went and I tried to figure out how to do that. But I have to add another person to my team.
Yes.
That means I have to pay more. And we barely break even as it is.
Forget it.
So I'll just put those episodes in the Dropbox.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because I actually just listened right before this episode. I listened to the special Patreon episode that you just did.
Oh, with Amy?
So good.
Thanks.
I did not hear the one that you did with your husband because that wasn't. But maybe you could put that one in there too.
Yeah, I'll put them all in there for you so that you can.
Well, it's
know
funny
what we're talking
because
about.
I know the story, but I think I know it in a much more general sense, and I'm getting a lot more of the details. And
there's a lot of nuance to it and a lot of minutia.
Yeah, and I think that you're telling it really well. So.
Thank you.
As a producer, I'm like, oh, Julie's doing okay on her own with this because I have nothing to do with those Patreon special episods, folks. And
yeah.
Julie's
this is all
doing
me.
It. Yeah,
this is all me and Amy or whoever is talking to me at that particular time.
Right. But bravo.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It feels good. It still feels. It's behind a very small paywall, obviously, for the reason that I haven't spoken publicly about it all these years. even though it's probably not necessary at this point. It's probably neither here
It's
nor
been
there.
long enough, but it's nice as a little incentive to tell everyone in the Patreon, please go and listen to it because it is really interesting, and it's you'll get to know a little bit more about Julie and her past.
A lot more.
And for those of you who aren't patrons yet, you can still sign up and go ahead and listen to that stuff, and it'll all still be on there whenever you sign up.
And if you become a senior Gen Genie on Patreon, you get a special handmade gift from moi, which may be a pair of DNA earrings.
Wow. You're so crafty.
But yeah, so thank you so much, patrons, and I appreciate it. And as always, feedback on those episodes is very welcome because the type of, you all know that I need positive reinforcement at all times.
There you go. Well, I'll start and say, good job, Julie.
Thank you. Thanks,
keep
Rich.
it up. Keep it up.
Completely not fishing for a compliment.
No, I know.
Okay.
I know you're not. But we all need to hear it. When we do something and we put it out there. And I think it's very brave of you to go and tell that story.
It's brave for legal reasons, but it's actually very therapeutic for mental health reasons.
Well, win-win.
There you go. There you go. Okay, let's talk about, did you hear that the state of Texas is now sending DNA tests home with their students?
I did see that, yes.
Now, one would think my first instinct when I heard this was, oh, finally, that stupid family tree experiment that we have to do in 5th grade is finally going to become something that is not so awkward for adoptees.
Is that what you thought? I love that. I love that that's where your mind went, right?
I'm like, oh, finally, they can actually build their family tree in keeping with the purpose of that assignment in the first place, because it's a genealogy assignment and a genetic assignment and all of those things. However, I spoke too soon.
Yes.
The reason they're sending DNA tests home with students in Texas is that so when the next time that there is a mass shooting in a school using semi-automatic weapons, it'll be that much easier for them to identify the mutilated, unrecognizable bodies of those children. I guess I should have done a trigger warning on that.
Well, honestly, I don't think you need to do a trigger warning because it happens every day in this country.
Yeah, really, how can we not be triggered? It just happened 2 days ago in Missouri.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It is horrific that is where we are.
Oh, certainly.
Yeah.
Certainly. Laura, a listener, showed me that, and she said, do you think I should post this on the page, on the CutOff Genes page? Or would it be too political or something? And or are we going to, I'm like, post it.
Yeah.
We are not afraid of truth there.
No, and the sad part is, I guess there is a need for it, right? I mean, because they couldn't identify some of those children.
Right, and they are clearly expecting it to happen again because nothing else is being done.
In one way, it's very pragmatic. I mean, it's a terrible thing, but I guess in some ways you're like, well, I guess, God forbid, if my kid was at school and this was happening, I'd want to know if it was him or not, or her, And so it's terrible that that's where we are. I understand why they're doing it, but I think the reasoning behind it is
so twisted.
Yeah. And then I saw somebody's like, oh, well, don't swab your kid and send it in because they'll use it to, I don't know, microchip your kid or whatever.
Right. Then there's that whole thing.
But, the other part of it is, I guess you don't have to send it in. I guess you can just swab your kid and keep the kit. And then, God forbid, if you ever need to, send it in.
Yeah, then you can give it to them. Yeah.
What do you say about it? I mean,
what can you say? It's all been said and nothing is being done.
Yeah.
Okay, let's moving on to something light. Death certificates.
Let's talk about death. Oh my God.
I'm on this page on Facebook that sometimes when I'm just looking for new content, for light new content, I go there, and that's why I did this. And it's called Intriguing Death Certificates. I think I've referred to it before.
Okay.
But this one was so funny that the person who posted it was confused, and after reading it a couple times, you realize what it's really saying. But on its face, it's like, What? All right. So this is from Pittsburgh in 1909. A baby was born prematurely named Annie Heron, and on December 14th, 1909. And the cause of death was as follows: premature birth, being 4.5 months gestation. Yes, that's very premature, and shock. And then it says it lived several hours. And then the contributory cause of death was shock from news that her mother was dying.
What?
Exactly. So I'm like, how does that baby know that her mother is dying? What it actually means, and it's just a poorly filled out death certificate. The mother of that baby had received news that her mother was dying.
Oh.
And had gone into shock, which had caused a premature birth.
Oh, my goodness. What a tragedy.
I know. Isn't that sad? Isn't that awful? But so the mother did live. But yeah, I thought it was so, I thought that, granted that there's only 2 short lines for him to write on, but he could have been a little more specific about that for people like us to mock.
But I mean, is that really worth putting on a death certificate?
You have to put the cause of death, but the contributory is always the more interesting part of those.
Okay.
Because it's kind of editorializing what they feel also had a part in it.
Right. So
you know what I mean?
The premature birth was the cause of death.
Yes.
And the contributing circumstances was this shock that brought on
that the mother had.
Yes.
Exactly.
Oh my gosh.
And maybe that wasn't it. Maybe she was going to have a miscarriage anyway. But
maybe, yeah.
It was 1909. So
I may have mentioned this before in another podcast, but there's a grave very close to where my mother is buried, and it's a grave of a child. And I want to say the kid was only maybe 3 years old when he passed. And there used to be, when I would go visit my mom's grave, there used to be like little toy trains and little stuffed animals and things. It's so heartbreaking,
Yeah.
And it's sweet in that they would, because the kid had been gone a long time, that they were still bringing these toys and things like that to the grave. But I just went recently for my mom's birthday, and there was nothing on that grave. And of course, again, who knows? They clean them off every week, so
Right. Which is a good cemetery, by the way.
Right.
Most of the cemeteries don't.
I took note of it though.
It's for the family. It's for the family.
Sure.
We all know that baby is not there.
Yeah.
But I think whatever a family needs to do to deal with their grief is perfectly fine.
There's one of the things I find so fascinating about this and so sad about this grave, and forgive my talking about this is not really about DNA, but the fact that on the gravestone it says we love you the most, which is sweet.
Oh.
But then I kept thinking, like, oh my God, what if there were any other brothers and sisters that went to visit this grave, how would they feel seeing that?
Okay, my guess is at the time there weren't other brothers and sisters.
Sure. Possibly.
One would hope.
Yeah.
One would hope. That would be extremely cruel if there were.
Like, I understand the thought and the decision to put that on there, and then I wrote a song about this a long time ago.
Did you?
Called Joey, yeah, and about this gravestone, and it's so.
Was his name Joey?
It wasn't. It was not. A friend of mine, when I was a little boy, was hit by a car and was killed. And I still think of him, because we were friends. And so I called it Joey, but it's not,
Was Joey hit by the car on your street?
Yes, right in front of the house.
No.
He was in a big wheel. Do you remember big wheels?
Yes.
They were very low to the ground. After that happened, my mother went and got my big wheel out of the garage and threw it in the trash. This is a real downer, Julia. We're talking about I'm just as much to blame for this. Here I am talking about gravestones and all that, but this is where my head went after the death certificate.
So All right. I want to do a quick In the Trenches that is somewhat off topic, but relates to vital records,
Okay.
which is on topic. But it happens to be my vital records. So a lot of the listeners, all the listeners know that I am Australian and that I was born in Australia. My guess is most of them don't know that I am not a U.S. citizen. And in all these years that I've been complaining about politics, I have never been able to vote.
I did not know that.
By the way, it's not like I haven't tried. So 12 years ago, I have told this story. There was a new law passed where adoptees who were adopted by an American citizen could now automatically get American citizenship. And I'm like, hey, that's me.
Okay.
So I paid my $500, what have you, and filled out all those forms and did that whole thing so that I could just automatically have dual citizenship because I don't plan on giving up my Australian citizenship. And I went to several. Here's the thing. I jumped through so many hoops for this. And when I finally went to my last meeting, the guy comes in and says, oh, we missed something. There's a discrepancy on the dates. You had to have been under 18 before this certain date. Or I can't remember exactly what it was, but
Right.
I couldn't use that law to automatically get my citizenship. So I said, oh, you're kidding. Okay, well, I'll just apply for my U.S. citizenship. I mean, there's no reason I can't become a U.S. citizen. I'm married to an American. I've had a green card since I was 15. So, and I said, can I apply the money that I've already used towards that because it's very expensive as well? And he said, no, you have to start again. And I was so pissed that I said, well, forget that then. I'm just going to keep my green card. And so that was what happened. So recently I was looking at my passport. I'm thinking that I would like to travel. And my passport was making sure to see when my passport expires. And I have another year on that passport, my Australian passport. But when I went out of town recently, I emptied out my wallet of things that weren't necessary to have with me, and one of them was my green card. Well, I can't find my green card.
Uh-oh.
So, and I know it's somewhere, but I don't know where. And so I was like, well, this is the time. Maybe I'll just go ahead and do my U.S. citizenship so I don't have to deal with the green card anymore. I'll just have two passports.
Yeah, you can get dual citizenship.
And I can vote. Hi, yes, I can get dual.
You don't have to give up one to have the other.
No, I don't.
Right? Yeah.
I don't. You used to have to, but you don't now. For depending on what country it is, and you can have dual citizenship with Australia. So I was like, great. So, and now also you can fill all those forms out online. So I went and I started the whole process and blah, blah, blah. And then they're like, and now please make a copy of your green card to show us.
Oh, no.
I'm like, I can't find my green card. And then it said, if you can't find your green card, you need to upload a receipt for where you applied for a new green card. So then I had to go and apply for my new green card on a whole separate thing, and I had to give them another $500.
Oh, my gosh.
To apply for my new green card. So now I'm waiting for my new green card, or for that. So I have that appointment set up to go in and do that, at which time I'm going to say, actually, I don't want a green card. I want to get my citizenship.
Right.
But I went back to continue filling out my citizenship form, and they wanted me to upload a copy of my marriage certificate. So I went to find my marriage certificate, and and I can't find my marriage certificate.
Maybe you don't exist, Julie.
What is happening? I can't find it. And we have a little safe, a little metal safe where we keep our vital records in. And it's not in there. And I know we've used it before because we used it when we bought our house. We had to prove that we were married. And so I couldn't find it. So I was like, great. So then I go on. I'm like, I have to get a copy of my marriage certificate. I go online to Vital Records, and they're like, okay, you can order it here and wait 4 to 6 weeks for it to come, in which case it'll be too late before my appointment. Or you can make an appointment to come in and get it on such and such a date. So I did that. So I went in to get it the other day. Finally got up there and I had to show proof of things. And she's like, well, I need to see the email that you were sent with your appointment time. And I said, what email? And she said, it'll be under vital records in your emails on your phone. And I'm like, I'm a genealogist. Do you have any idea how many vital records emails I have? She didn't understand that joke at all, but it was true. Anyway, so finally we found the right one after going through all the other ones. And then she started to look it up so that she could just print it out for me, which is what they could have done. They can't find it. There is no record of my marriage in the LA County records.
Oh my God.
And she was like supervisors were coming over and they were like trying different searches and blah, 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 blah. They tried for like an hour. And finally they're like, well, we're going to have to go up to Sacramento and have them do a deeper search. So as of now, I may not be married, or that's what my husband is hoping. And they gave me a number to call to see what is going on, but I'm so scared to call because I'm going to be triggered by having to wait half an hour on a phone for someone to answer first off, and for them to say we're working on it and not give me a succinct answer. And the fact is, I remember going to a week before I got married, my husband and I had to go to Norwalk to get our marriage license.
Right.
So I know we have it, or we applied for it. And anyway.
Well, if I were a conspiracy theorist, I think someone is trying to erase you.
Well, they're going to fail miserably.
But you know what'll happen is you'll finally jump through all these hoops. You'll finally get the marriage certificate, and then you'll find it. It'll show up in your house, the old one.
That and my green card are probably together somewhere.
Right?
I guarantee it.
Let's take a break, shall we?
Let's.
If you're enjoying our podcast, please subscribe, rate, and review. Or consider supporting us on our Patreon page, patreon.com/CutOff Genes Podcast. Now back to Julie and me.
We're back. I was so long-winded in the first segment today that we decided to skip the second segment because all of that was pure gold and we don't want to lose it.
Once you start talking about death certificates and dead babies and mutilated children,
we just can't stop.
What else is there to say?
Really nothing. Nothing. All right. So a couple weeks ago, I introduced you and the listeners to a series of books written by author Laura K. Joy, who is also an author. These are books that look and read like children's books, but are actually for adult adoptees or adults who have adoptees to share with their children. And this is my conversation with Laura. We had a really bad phone connection at the time, so I did my very best to fix it. So this is the first part of my conversation with Laura. Her story about coming out of the fog is really resonated with me, and I would love for you guys to have a listen.
Great. Let's listen in.
Hey, everyone. I have on the line Laura K. Joy, who is the author of the books that I talked about a couple weeks ago. Welcome, Laura.
Hi, Julie. Thanks for having me.
You're welcome. Okay, first of all, let's go over the books again, the titles of the books again, so we can get that out of the way. We'll talk about it more in the end, but just to get everybody on the same page. Tell us about the books.
Okay, so I have 3. They're all illustrated books, and the order in which they came out were The Goodbye Hypervigilance, Healing Adoptee Worry.
My favorite.
And the second was Nobody Looks Like Me, an Adoptee Experience. And the last one, and just, I think it was end of August, this one came out, Self-Attunement and Adoptee Superpower.
Great. And I raved about them, and I'm so happy to have them in my arsenal.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so glad they helped you.
They really did. They really did. And I think they're I think they're essential for adoptive parents specifically to have before they adopt.
Yes, I think so too.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to talk about how they came about later. But first of all, I would love to hear your story.
Okay, it has a little bit of everything from adoption land. I have a reunion, estrangement, secondary rejection, and a big surprise at the end. So I am a domestic white adoptee, adopted into a white family. I was born in 1979. I can only answer the beginning of my story because I did search and find and was able to ask questions. So my biological mother and my biological father were dating for several months when they became pregnant. And when she addressed him and let him know she was pregnant, he literally disappeared off the face of the earth. She never saw him again. And so she also had my brother, who's 3 years older than I am, and he has Down syndrome. And when he was born and his father found out he had special needs, he also left.
Wow.
So she was abandoned by both fathers, and her mother was helping take care of my brother while she worked. And ultimately, she was the one who recommended my mother consider adoption for me because she felt like she couldn't help any more than she already was. And my mom tried everything she could to keep me. When I found her, she said, I wanted you. I wanted to keep you. But she didn't feel like she had enough support. And she also didn't want me to get lost in my brother's care because care for people with Down syndrome was very different in the 70s.
Mm-hmm.
So she felt like it was the best thing for both of us, especially with her mother's encouragement.
Sure.
So she put me up for adoption. I was adopted through a Catholic adoption agency. I was born at least a week late. I was born breech. I had a broken left collarbone.
Ooh.
My APGAR scores were very low. So it was a very traumatic experience for both her and I.
Mm-hmm.
And so I went to basically a foster care home for 5 weeks, then I was placed with my adoptive parents. I remember learning from them that I was adopted when I was 8 years old. And
you didn't know before that you were adopted?
No.
Oh, wow.
Apparently my adoptive mother had said she told me when I was 4 years old, but I don't remember that conversation. And there wasn't regular conversation.
Sure. So she thought that
it.
Because she had used it anecdotally one time, it would resonate with you throughout your childhood. Okay.
Yeah. So note to adoptive parents, that is not enough conversation.
Just having one conversation is not enough.
Not enough. So when I was 8, that's when I remember really knowing and remembering from that point forward. I did not, even though I was white, domestic adoptee, I still did not look anything like my parents. And that is part of the reason for that. One of the books, the Nobody Looks Like Me. Yeah. I have blue eyes, brown hair. I'm rather petite. And, my adoptive parents have green eyes, black hair. I mean, like, totally not genetically related, you could tell.
Yeah.
And then also personality wise, just the way my brain functioned, it did not fit, did not work in that family unit. Yeah. I knew I was adopted, and I also felt from a very young age that I didn't belong there.
Yes.
I felt like I didn't belong. I knew I wasn't getting what I needed emotionally. I started taking notes from a very young age about how I would do things differently and how I wish things were different.
Do you mean literally taking notes?
It meant mental. Yeah.
Okay.
Mental.
Okay. Just curious.
Mental. No, I didn't write anything down.
Okay.
Heaven forbid it be found. But
I
did take mental notes, and really just knew I didn't belong and didn't fit. I tried to focus on doing the opposite. And part of that also meant having financial stability, which we never had when I was growing up, and going to college to make sure I could have that financial stability. From early teen years, definitely into college years, that relationship became very obligatory. Mm-hmm. And it was from a place of obligation that I maintained that contact and relationship. So during my teen years, I did get like non-ID information. I knew I had a brother. At that point, I knew I also had paternal siblings from
How did you get that information?
My adoptive mom gave it to me. It was never hidden. Yeah,
Okay.
It was never hidden from me. They never acted as if I wasn't adopted. But when we had these conversations, when she gave me that non-ID information, this is in freshman year of high school, the conversation was always circled back to her.
Uh-huh.
Or she would place her own narrative on what you could read into the non-ID information.
Right.
One such example is that my biological parents were older when they had me. My mom was 28, and according to the paperwork, my dad was 37.
Okay.
So just based upon their ages, she assumed I was the product of an affair.
Oh.
And put that narrative to my story without knowing that if it was true or not.
Oh, yeah. I bet that happens a lot.
Yeah. And I think that's what I learned very quickly, not to make up other people's stories for them, because
or try to tell their stories for them.
Or try to tell their stories, because it's not yours to tell, and you don't know what's true and what's not if you weren't the person involved. So just that's an example, right, of how the conversations would always go. And as other people have said on your show, like, if I was ever asked about searching or asked about how I was never asked about how I felt about being adopted, but like searching was the big question.
Yeah.
I always knew, like, I'm not supposed to say yes. I'm supposed
of course
to say
not.
No,
right.
because I'm supposed to be happy. And why would I need more than this?
Yes.
So
that would be a direct affront to your adoptive parents.
Yeah.
That was always the message that we got.
Yeah. Whenever that conversation came up, I'd always, play that off, of course. Like, as I got older, out of college, as I would be asked about searching by other people who weren't my adoptive parents for my biological family, I would say, no, I do not want to search for them, because I do not need more people to take care of.
Oh, interesting.
Because I always felt like that was my job. And that if I had more family, it was just more people for me to take care of, because that's what I thought my role was with them.
Right. Because you were adopted to fulfill something for them, for some trauma that they had experienced, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So, I'm deep in the fog here. I mean, I'm not like deep in the fog. I mean, I understand what I'm experiencing in my adoptive family, but I have no idea that there's this whole other layer that's related to adoption trauma and relinquishment trauma. So as I'm answering these questions, or as I'm sorting out my feelings, it's all sort of in relation to my adoptive family and that lived experience. But that's one thing, right, that is sort of telling. The other thing, I said to my husband, it always felt like my adoptive mother got me for her, and that I was supposed to fulfill her emotional needs.
Absolutely.
It creates such a dissonance, right, in your system. Like, wait a minute, I'm the child here, but yet I'm supposed to take care of you.
Yeah, you were given a role to play at a very early age.
Exactly. Yeah. The third thing I would always say, and I would say this to my husband, and again, I haven't heard this from anybody but other adoptees specifically, is that I would be relieved when my adoptive parents died.
Oh, interesting.
And it wasn't that I wished them ill will or anything. It's just that I would then be relieved of that obligation and the societal pressure to maintain that.
Yeah.
That facade of that relationship.
Okay.
So I have this inkling, right, of things are not quite right, but I'm supposed to play this role and I'm supposed to show up in a certain way. Then my husband and I decided to have children. And and my first pregnancy was, I had a boy, and it did resonate with me that he was my first biological relative,
right,
and that he was the first person to look like me, and that I could then know what my mother experienced when she gave birth,
right,
and then holding him and never being able to give him to someone else.
Yes.
So,
yes.
I mean, how could anyone do that? So that was about all of that experience with my son as far as touching on those adoption topics. Then my daughter came along and I was pregnant with her and I thought she was a boy. I thought, I'm certain I'm just going to have boys. And I went to the ultrasound to find out the gender and it's a girl. And I was terrified. I couldn't talk to anybody for a couple of days. I was so scared. I kind of let it process for a couple of weeks. And finally, I couldn't get over it. I couldn't get around it. I couldn't get past it. And so at that point, I was concerned about not being able to bond with her and not being able to, maybe having postpartum.
So you think that's probably a direct correlation to your relationship with your mother?
I don't know which part it seemed to be all encompassed into this. All of it was just wrapped up into the fact that I was having a girl. I think it touched on every part, the biological and the adoptive part. So, I'm 24 weeks along in the pregnancy, and I decide I need to talk to somebody. So I went to a therapist and just kind of talked her through what was happening. And at the end, I said, oh, by the way, I'm adopted. Mm-hmm. Just sort of as an aside, like, oh, yeah.
Isn't that funny that we spent, I spent years in therapy before it was even suggested that possibly the fact that I was adopted may have something to do with any of this.
Yeah. And it wasn't like she asked me if I was adopted. I just randomly thought, oh yeah, I should probably throw that in.
Huh.
And that's what she zeroed in on. And luckily, as we know now, that people who are not informed in adoption trauma or relinquishment trauma or trauma at all, can do more harm than good in therapy. So I was very lucky that she was at least informed of that. And she said, well, I think that's where we need to start. And that's what we need to look at. So she gave me this book, and it's called 20 Things Adoptive Kids Wish Their Adoptive Parents Knew. Within the first couple of chapters, there's this woman who's an adoptee who says she remembers feeling, where's my mom? Missing her mom. And that is all it took, Julie. I was on the floor. This is in 2008. So of course, it's the first time I've ever been to therapy. I don't know the different parts of therapy, how it's supposed to work. And I let those words just sort of wash over me. And it was this wave of grief. And I was crying and shaking. And I really went into myself and became that newborn baby. I could see my newborn baby self just stiff and crying. Yeah. Where's my mom? Oh. Where's my mom? I was on my own. I'm not in the therapist's office. I'm at home, and I'm just letting this happen. I'm just letting this grief process and come out of me. And when I got off that floor, I don't know how long I was there, 45 minutes. I don't know, 2 hours. I have no idea. I stood up and I was a completely different person because that grief had been stuck in my body for 29 years. Yeah. And I was able to let it process, let it move out, let it move through, and then be able to put that newborn baby into me and say, it's okay. I can take care of you now. Like, I've got you. Yeah. I had instantly more clarity and more empathy for everybody. I think I had been walking through the world in so much pain. I know I had acted out and had narcissistic tendencies. I mean, all the trauma and all the grief that I was carrying. Yeah. Unprocessed.
When you say narcissistic tendencies, can you expand on that a little bit?
I think it's a combination of this grief and trauma that I was carrying and then the environment that I grew up in where my needs weren't met.
Mm-hmm.
So I acted out in such a way that I've read books about narcissism, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I think I've done some of these things before.
Huh.
And I said to my therapist, I'm like, am I a narcissist? She's like, if you're asking me, you're not a narcissist. Like, this
Rule number one.
Rule number one, this is a trauma response.
Mm-hmm.
This is a survival response.
Yeah.
To how your environment and how you were feeling from this unprocessed grief.
Right. Just to expand on that a little bit, that resonated with me in that I very early on realized that nobody else is going to fight for me. I'm going to have to fight for me. Nobody else is going to put me as number one, like most parents do. Like they will, jump in front of a car for their children. I never got the sense that my parents would do that.
Yeah.
So I became very like, well, I'm just going to have to do it myself.
Right. And that's exactly how I felt growing up. I had to take care of myself. In fact, I'm working on a memoir. I have no idea if it'll ever come out, but what the working title I have at the moment is called, I'm working on mothering myself.
Yeah.
Because that's exactly what we had to do. And we were not equipped to do that.
Right.
We were children and we shouldn't have had to do that.
Right.
And so of course we didn't do it correctly.
Right. Right.
Which led us to some maladaptive coping mechanisms. And so that's where I feel like I would reach out or act out in a way that, had those sort of narcissistic threats.
Right. Right.
I will tell you that was the moment I came out of the fog, and I understood completely that adoption was rooted in loss, and there is the primal wound. And of course, I don't know that language yet. In 2008, I haven't read the primal wound, but that was so clear to me.
Mm-hmm.
After that experience, I get up off the floor and I am instantly excited to have a daughter.
Oh, that's amazing.
And ready for her. And she really is the catalyst, right, for this. If I did have another boy, who knows if I would have ever come out of the fog, right?
Oh, interesting.
So I feel like that was the reason. Like she was the catalyst, and she's a healer to me. So I'm ready, excited to have my daughter, and also to start the journey of finding my mom.
Mm-hmm.
So I was born in Indiana, raised in Indiana. I don't live there now, but I called the adoption agency. They said, we'll reach out to her. If she says she's interested, we'll put you in touch anonymously at first, and then you take it from there.
Right.
And so
they still have to, at that point, they were still, agencies still do. They still gatekeep.
Yeah.
Whoever gets to, the person gets to decide on anonymity without you even having an option.
Exactly. Yeah, of course. And I'm so novice, right? This is 14 years ago now. Yeah. Like I'm not even thinking about DNA at this point. Just like, okay, I guess my first call should be the agency.
Right.
And, okay, I don't know how many people have told you this on your show, but like when I called them, they said, well, we have to go down to the storage unit to find your file. And there was a tornado.
Oh God.
And they
the amount of natural disasters that seem to hit adoption agencies and court records buildings is amazing.
It's amazing, right? So I'm like, oh gosh, well, I hope they can find it. So of course they do. And they reach out to her, and I'm 29 years old at this time. And she immediately says yes to contact. And then we send our anonymous letters and pictures through the agency, and then we connect from there. And she said to me, I thought you would have looked before now. She'd kind of given up on me finding her because she thought I would have done it earlier in my life.
Okay, that is part one of Laura K. joy. And you can hear the rest of that on episode 612.
Thank you so much, Laura. In the meantime, I am Richard Castle, and you can go to my website, richardcastle.com, or you can follow me on the Twitter or on Instagram at Castle Songs.
I am Julie Dixon Jackson. Just a reminder, November is National Adoption Awareness Month, which means that we're going to get inundated with unsolicited ads about how beautiful adoption is. Be kind to your fellow adoptees. And remember, it's also National Adoptee Awareness Month. And October 31st, I think, or is it October 30th? No, October 30th is National Adoptee Remembrance Day, a time for us all to remember adoptees that we have lost before their time due to mental illness. And
Nice.
Also, if you would like to reach out and have me help you with your DNA search, find me at cutoffgenes.com. You can also join the Facebook page. And if you would like to share your story on the podcast, reach out to me in all of those social places. Oh, and also, I've been adding more video to our YouTube page. Before you could just listen to the podcast on the YouTube page. A lot of people don't even know that. But I've been uploading specific TikToks up there as well. So people who are not on TikTok can view my TikToks there. All right.
They don't have to go anywhere but here to hear what you always say at the end of every podcast, do they, Julie?
The truth is in your genes.